Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where we discuss leading political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. It's a very big episode today. We have a very important development to cover, so let's jump in. China's 8-day Golden Week holiday has officially ended, and Beijing has returned to work swinging. On Thursday, yesterday, China's Ministry of Commerce, MOFCOM, and the General Administration of Customs, GAC, announced a sweeping expansion of export controls across critical so-called new quality productive forces sectors, covering rare earths, advanced materials, and clean energy technologies, and what analysts are calling one of the most significant escalations in the US-China technology and trade confrontation to date. The move, codified through 6 separate notices, takes effect on the 8th of November of this year and will require special government approval for the export of items including super hard materials, 5 medium and heavy rare earth elements such as holmium, lithium battery components, and synthetic graphite. Notices 59 and 60 have not yet been published, prompting speculation about additional undisclosed measures. According to UK-based Reuters, the White House was, quote, blindsided, end quote, by the decision, while officials described it as, quote, a massive escalation, end quote, that could reshape global supply chains overnight. China's announcement number 61 could give Beijing de facto control over parts of the global semiconductor supply chain. US-based New York Times noted that China refines roughly 99% of the world's dysprosium, a key element used in heat-resistant chip components and advanced defense systems. One refinery in Wuxi, near Shanghai, operated by Shenghe Resources, a firm majority owned by China's Ministry of Land Resources, produces the world's entire supply of this ultra-pure mineral. Experts say the implications for the semiconductor and defense industries are profound. Quote, if enforced and the US doesn't respond strongly, Beijing could have complete control over the entire advanced semiconductor supply chain, end quote, said Jimmy Goodrick of the University of California's Institute for Global Conflict and Cooperation, adding, quote, even US AI chips made in a US fab sent to a US AI lab would need Beijing's permission. End quote. The US-based Wall Street Journal reported that under the new rules, any product containing Chinese rare earth materials making up 0.1% or more of its value will require Beijing's approval for export, regardless of where it is manufactured. The same restrictions apply to goods made abroad using Chinese technologies or intermediate products. This extraterritorial reach could effectively subject large portions of the global clean energy and semiconductor ecosystems to Chinese regulatory authority. However, some experts warn that Beijing's move carries risks. Quote, the US has the ability to counterpunch hard, end quote, said Chris McGeer, a former US State Department and National Security Council export controls official, writing, quote, requiring a US license for any chip made with US technology to be exported to China would put China's entire technology industry at risk. End quote. In the US, the former Biden administration laid some groundwork for reducing dependency. According to the US Department of Defense, America currently imports around 70% of its rare earths from China. Then, under the current Trump administration, invoking wartime emergency powers in March of this year, sought to expand US production and processing capacity by fast-tracking financing and permitting for domestic mines. The government also invested $400 million in MP Materials Mountain Pass Mine, the only operational rare earth facility in the US, making the Department of Defense its largest shareholder. Trump further explored securing overseas supply through partnerships in Greenland and Ukraine, though both options remain years away from viability. While the US is moving to reduce dependency, frankly, in the short term, it is still very dependent. Speaking on these developments today, veteran China analyst Bill Bishop observed, quote, the Trump administration appears blindsided by what is a massive escalation and, if a reaction to last week's 50% entity listing rule, is a disproportionate response. The PRC has escalation dominance in rare earths and clean energy, related to technologies, but the US does have areas of real leverage too, though so far it has been unwilling to exercise much of that leverage. If that changes, the escalation cycle is going to accelerate and become increasingly painful. end quote. As the world's two largest economies weaponize the materials and minerals underpinning clean energy and AI innovation, the risk is no longer limited to tariffs or blacklists. It extends to the fundamental ability of either side to produce the technologies of the future. We have entered a new phase of economic warfare, with the real and scary risk that escalation could spread beyond just economic conflict. Next up, we move to the Chinese economy, but just quickly, if you want to continue to be on top of all things China, including this emerging and fast escalating US-China conflict, consider subscribing to China Update. Hit the bell notification icon and you will be. If you're getting some value from today's episode, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you'd like to help keep the channel financially sustainable, I rely primarily on your support to keep going. It is just me making these episodes every day here in China. A lot of work and risk, frankly, but your support is a huge source of motivation, and I very much appreciate all of it. Thank you so much. Now, let's move on to the Chinese economy. China's 8-day so-called Golden Week holiday generated record travel numbers, but showed a sobering reality for policymakers. Consumers are moving again, but they are not spending much. This will be deeply disappointing to policymakers as they have been trying so hard to increase domestic demand in order to shift their growth model to something more sustainable and less dependent on surging debt. Official data published yesterday showed domestic tourism trips reached 888 million between October 1st and 8th, a 16% rise from a year earlier. We do know that this is an official number and it is suspiciously auspicious. 888 ba in Chinese is considered an incredibly lucky number. While total tourism revenue climbed to 809.1 billion yuan, 113.6 billion US dollars, up 15.4% year on year. Yet the average spend per trip per day slipped to 113.9 yuan, only 15 US dollars, the lowest level in 3 years and below 2019 levels, highlighting the fragility of household confidence amid a patchy post-pandemic recovery. This year's holiday, which merged the National Day and Mid-Autumn Festival, offered travellers an extended break, up to 12 days for those taking extra leave, spurring congestion at scenic sites across the country. But as Chinese financial media outlet Taixin noted, per capita spending failed to keep pace with the surge in activity. In Sichuan, for instance, top tourist attractions saw visitors rise 7.4%, but ticket revenue only 3.5%, implying a 3.8% drop in spending per visitor. In Hubei's Jingzhou, tourist numbers more than doubled, but revenue rose by just 47%, a 27% decline in per capita spend. Sales at key retail and catering businesses during the first 4 days of the holiday rose only 3.3% year on year, slower than the 6.3% pace recorded during the May Day holiday earlier this year, and this is according to the Ministry of Commerce. Local governments tried to stoke consumption with 480 million yuan in cultural and tourism vouchers, but those efforts failed to offset consumer caution. Entertainment spending painted a similar picture. The holiday box office brought in 1.84 billion yuan, 254 billion US dollars, down 13% from last year, despite 11 new releases, up from 8 in 2024, and lower ticket prices, averaging 36.6 yuan, 5 US dollars, down 3.7 yuan year on year. That made it the second weakest National Day box office since 2019, surpassing only 2020's pandemic-hit season when half the country was in lockdown. Indeed, market observers dubbed this week Golden Week, spelled W-E-A-K, a play on words capturing both record travel and declining enthusiasm to spend. Hopes that a 5-month rally in Chinese equities, the longest since 2018, might generate a wealth effect proved misplaced. While stocks have recovered somewhat, they make up only a small fraction of household assets, and the boost to spending has been limited. Most households keep their wealth in property, which is 5 years into a painful crisis. quote, holiday activities are back to normal but largely lukewarm, end quote, Citigroup economists wrote in a note yesterday, noting that, quote, new growth momentum was muted, end quote, and that there is, quote, limited evidence for a wealth effect, end quote, from the equity gains. The subdued Golden Week spending adds to a growing list of warnings about China's uneven recovery. While mobility and tourism show the country's social rhythms have normalized, the spending restraint points to lingering concerns over income security, youth unemployment, and property market weakness. As UK-based Reuters summarized, quote, Chinese holidaymakers' average spending dipped to a 3-year low, dashing hopes that a domestic stock market rally would encourage cautious consumers to open their wallets, end quote. For Beijing, the paradox of booming activity but weak consumption reflects the challenge of reigniting household confidence. Despite record crowds at tourist sites and packed trains and highways, the numbers suggest the world's second-largest economy remains trapped in a cycle of high mobility, low spending. Without stronger wage growth or a revival in consumer sentiment, or indeed a rebalancing away from its old growth model to something more focused on household spending, something that regular viewers know is easier said than done, Golden Week may be a harbinger of what lies ahead. A China that's bustling but still reluctant to buy, as its hundreds of millions of households feel the pain of its slow structural decline. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. We're back to a regular schedule now. There may be an episode tomorrow. This hasn't been confirmed yet. But for now, have a good Friday, have a restful weekend, and I hope to see you for the next episode either tomorrow or for a new week on Monday.